Hey guys, welcome back. Carry it full circle. Excited today to show you a car we just wrapped up this week. It's been an ongoing build for a couple years now. It's a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air two-door hardtop. These are arguably the most iconic American classic vehicles ever produced. Most people know what a 57 Chevy looks like. It was really the pinnacle of design for the 1950s. And from the outside, it's basically bone stock with the exception of the aftermarket shot wheels and tires. We've got 18s in the front, 20s in the back. One cool thing to remember about cars from the 1950s and 60s is the models changed every year. A 56, entirely different than a 57. A 58, totally different car. And my mom and dad talk about a lot of times, it was a big deal to go to the dealership and see the latest year's model unveiled in the showroom. It was a big deal because a lot of engineering went into the changes that were made every year. And I can assure you, nobody today is camping out at the Toyota dealership parking lot waiting for the new Camry to arrive. This car is sitting on a Roadster Shop chassis, like a lot of our builds. And I know I've mentioned it in pretty much every video. We rarely alter the exterior appearance of the builds that we do. We leave the look alone and really focus on the drivetrain and really blowing people's minds with details under the hood, chassis, and everywhere else. So this is sitting on a Roadster Shop chassis, 9-inch Ford rear end, 4-bar suspension. The body is mini tubbed to allow for slightly wider wheels and tires in the back, get a little more traction. And of course, you've got rack and pinion steering. We've got coilovers all the way around. Really a nice ride. You get behind the wheel of this and it's like driving a new Cadillac. It really goes down the road nice. The interior is TMI bucket seats, console, door panels. Really a clean look with the black and the burgundy. You can see there's suede inserts in the door panels and the black baseball stitch. And TMI does a really good job of making each order one car at a time. Super custom, pretty much any color option, color combo, stitch color that you want. And we've been working with those guys for a long time. And this is just the latest example. So we've got an I Did It steering column. As far as the dash goes, this is all Dakota Digital RTX gauges, state-of-the-art, latest, greatest stuff. I've talked about Dakota Digital in previous builds, and this is one of the cooler setups that they have for these Tri-5 Chevys. I'll power it up for a second here, and you can see it looks stock, but that tack lights up with that yellow bar. And you've got oil pressure, battery built into the lower corners there. Really cool looking gauges, but again, they don't take away from the original appearance of the dash until they light up. A menu for different options and features that you can program. Also, TMI carpet, stock headliner, and that's pretty much it for the inside. The really cool thing about this car that takes it from a 57 Chevy that you see at a lot of car shows is what we put under the hood. So you pull into a show and you're wondering what's under the hood. A stock 283, maybe an LS, maybe an LT1 or supercharged LT4. Well, we went ahead and set up the baddest of them all, the LT5. So this is the LT5 376 cubic inch Chevrolet performance crate motor. It's got a 2.65 liter supercharger, which is about 65% larger than the LT4. This is 800 plus horsepower. It is a highly sought after iconic crate motor. We figured 57 Chevy, most iconic car, let's go with the most iconic crate motor you can come by. These engines are very hard to get a hold of. They bring big money just by themselves. These engines now are going for over $50,000 if you can find one. They originally were used in 2019 Corvette ZR1s. 1 year only production engine, and instantly became a classic in the crate engine world. But they didn't build a lot of them. They were low production. They were hard to get your hands on. The controllers, the computers for these engines, for a long time, nobody could get them. And without that, there's really not a lot you can do. It's just a nice looking engine on a stand without the computer to go with it and the other electronics that are involved to sync up with it. The customer we did this car for, he was lucky enough to run across one of these engines a number of years ago. And we have done many cars for this customer. Over the last 20 years, we've probably done 20 vehicles for him. A lot of really cool stuff. He had the engine. We weren't sure what car we were going to use it in. We built a 66 Corvette for this same gentleman. The intention was to use the engine in that car. However, it was too tall. So we needed a big car with a big engine bay. He had this car in his collection, and we decided this would be the way to go. This would be the perfect car to set up with the LT5. So we plumbed everything as clean as possible. With these supercharged cars, there's a lot of extra plumbing, there's a lot of wiring, there's a lot of computers and controllers and fuse boxes. We always try to keep our builds clean and try to set up the engine bay as if it left the factory this way. This one was a little more challenging because of all that's involved. So the LT5 supercharger is a little taller than the LT4. Also has 4 separate intercooler fittings and hoses that come out of the front of the supercharger. So we went ahead and plumbed these left and right, and they wrap into the intercooler right here. The intercooler pump sits right down here. And then we've got our AC condenser, our radiator. Everything has a home, and literally every square inch in this engine bay is taken up with some component. There's really no wasted space. We tried to lay everything out really clean. Another thing I want to talk about is the Wegner front drive setup. Wegner, those guys are good friends of ours. They're here in Wisconsin. They build incredible engines, the top engine builder in the country. They also make really cool pulleys and front drive systems for a bunch of different engines. This is the supercharger pulley here, for instance. They're black anodized and diamond cut, and really cool detail when you get that contrast of the black and the diamond cut. Every pulley on here, and there are a bunch of pulleys, all look like this. They're difficult to see because, like I said, there's not a lot of room in here. But check them out online. Wegner Automotive Research. They've got tons of cool stuff, and we're really fortunate to have those guys so close to us, where they're just a short drive away. We can pick up an engine, we can drop one off, and really good guys. All right, so I want to show you guys one of the coolest features of this car. So the trunk is all finished off, TMI interior panels. This guy right here is an oil reservoir. The LT5 engine is a dry sump oiling system. This is the oil reservoir. And rather than having a traditional deep oil pan, with the dry sump setup, you have a reservoir located somewhere else in the car, in this case in the trunk. This unit feeds oil to the engine via several oil pumps along the way. The advantage to the dry sump is you lose the oil starvation factor that you have with wet sump. So you're getting a constant steady flow of oil pressure at all times. Hard cornering, hard braking, acceleration. The oil pressure really isn't affected by any of those things like it is in a wet sump system. This is high-end race car stuff. It's really cool to have it in an old car. The other advantage, or another advantage of the dry sump, is the added oil capacity between the reservoir, this giant 16 AN hose that's plumbed front to back. This is about 3.5 gallon capacity and allows the oil to cool a lot quicker and just a lot more volume to work with. So we mounted this tank back here, custom bracketry, tried to make it look really clean. Another feature that people are not expecting when you pop the trunk, which again, I mentioned, that's what we live for, is the details that people don't expect to see. Also behind this panel, we have the battery, we have some more wiring. Pretty easy to pop that panel off. Things are rather accessible. Battery cutoff switch right here in the trunk, and that's about it for the trunk. So we just finished this car this week. In fact, we fired it up for the first time on Tuesday. Today's Saturday, so it's super fresh. I think what we'll do is get it outside, get it under the sunshine, and see how it runs, see how it sounds, and take it for a spin. All right, guys. So the most important part of this build is under the hood. Again, this is the LT5 supercharged motor originally used in the 2019 ZR1 Corvette. 6.2 liter or 376 cubic inch for my fellow Americans. It's an absolute beast and 800 plus horsepower, and we're pretty excited to see how it's going to move this car down the road. So we ended up mounting the PCV catch can setup over here. We've got our fuse box here. We've got power steering reservoir and all the plumbing down to the power steering pump in the rack, kind of in this quadrant here. One of the most complex issues we ran into is we ran out of space for the brake booster, and the geometry of the way the brakes worked, everything had to be kicked over to the driver's side because of the size of the engine. So if you can kind of see the bracketry behind the brake booster, you can see how it angles off towards the driver fender. That was a big job to get that all fit in there. Next to the brake booster bracketry is the hydraulic clutch reservoir. This has a really high-end hydraulic dual disc clutch setup. Tucked way back under the fender here is a vacuum pump for the brake booster. These engines really don't provide enough vacuum to keep a brake booster full, and so an auxiliary vacuum pump is what we always use in supercharged engines. We also built this panel, kind of a fender closeout panel, to hide a whole bunch of electronics. The ECU is back there, a whole bunch of wiring. And then we ended up moving the core support in order to fit the intercooler, the AC condenser, the radiator, the fans. Everything had to be squeezed into a tight area. This is the overflow reservoir, and you can see the intake, the throttle body intake snorkel here. Doesn't have a lot of room, so it took a lot of head scratching, a lot of hours, a lot of playing around with different plumbing to get this to all fit. We ended up running this ductwork inside the fender, and so there's a big filter that sits inside the fender right here. One thing that's super cool about these cars, up above the headlights is a mesh air intake that they had originally from the factory to pull fresh air into the passenger compartment. So right now, this mesh is an opening allowing air to flow into the filter to feed the engine. Everything was thought out thoroughly on this vehicle. A lot of man hours went into getting everything positioned, and having it look clean when you pop the hood. The car's sitting on a Roadster Shop chassis, 4-wheel disc brakes, high-end shot wheels, rack and pinion steering, coilovers all the way around, 9-inch Ford, 4-bar rear suspension. It's got a Rix fuel tank, and any of you builders know Rix tanks, there's nobody better. Heavy duty stainless tank. The interior is TMI, custom upholstery. We've got Dakota digital gauges. We've got I Did It steering column, Billet Specialties wheel, upgraded stereo system, console with integrated AC duct, and coolest of all, dry sump oiling system that we plumbed into the trunk. Really high-end stuff. This is a high-end build. This is a customer that we've been building cars for 20 years, and he has allowed us a lot of freedom, very involved in ideas of the builds of his cars. A true car guy, lots of cool ideas, lots of cool cars, and we've been super fortunate to work on most of them. Another cool thing that 57 Chevys have, a lot of you Tri-5 Chevy guys already know this, but for people that don't, this is the fuel fill in the car. That's the way they left the factory. And this is what I mentioned before about unique engineering and design every single year. The amount of time that went into creating an entirely new production vehicle year to year to year is something we can't fathom nowadays. If you go to our website and look at the gallery, you can check out the build of this car from beginning to end. It's called LT57, and if you can see the engine before it's in the car, you'll really appreciate those pulleys and the engineering that goes into them. They are full-blown jewelry on the front of this engine, and it's almost a shame that they're so hidden because they really look cool, and it's really nice to show them off. Another really neat feature about this car, we do this a lot, is the exhaust cutouts. I'll fire it up here and I'll show you quiet versus loud. So you can go from this all the way closed and quiet to this. At the flip of a switch. Keeps the neighbors happier when you're coming home late at night. So guys, there you have it. All the hard work's done. We hope you enjoyed everything and going over all the features. A lot of hours, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this build. Now for the fun part, take it for a spin.